Number: Alien SOS summons the most savage fleet of Deathworlders. The council chamber filled with panicked voices. Ambassador Kelvira stood at the center, her forearms trembling. She had just delivered the worst news in Valtorian history. The Shrikes had destroyed 13 colonies in 2 weeks. Millions were dead or missing. The enemy was getting closer to their home worlds. Elder Thon Malik raised one webbed hand for silence. His old eyes looked tired and afraid. "We have exhausted all options," he said slowly. "Our fleets cannot stop them. The other civilized races are too far away or too weak to help us." Someone in the back whispered the forbidden word, Earth. The chamber went completely silent. Every being in the room knew about Earth. It was the quarantined death world, on the edge of the galaxy. A planet so dangerous that even its dominant species called it hostile. The humans who lived there were considered barely civilized by galactic standards. Kelvira felt her breathing tubes constrict with fear. She had read the reports from the Singapore incident 47 years ago. A human cargo ship had been attacked by pirates. What happened next terrified the entire galaxy. The humans had tracked down every single pirate across 12 star systems and eliminated them with cold efficiency. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They simply hunted. After that, the Galactic Council had quietly agreed to leave Earth alone. The humans were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too violent. Better to let them stay in their corner of space. But now, the Valtorians had no choice. Thon Malik spoke again. "I propose we send a distress signal to Earth. We ask for their help." The arguing started immediately. Some council members called it madness. Others said humans were worse than the Shrikes. A few simply shook in fear at the thought of inviting Deathworlders into civilized space. Kelvira listened to them all. Then, she thought about the children dying in the Shrike attacks. She thought about her own daughter. Safe for now, but not for long if nothing changed. She stood. "I will send the message," she said firmly. "We ask for military advisors and support personnel. We do not mention the words soldiers or weapons. We make it sound peaceful." The council voted. The decision passed by 3 votes. Communications. Officer Priya composed the message carefully. Every word was chosen to sound gentle and non-threatening. They sent it toward Earth on the quantum band, hoping someone would answer. Hoping they would not regret this decision. The message traveled through space at speeds faster than light. It reached Earth's Terran Defense Command, Pacific Station. During the night shift, Commander Jin Woo was reviewing supply reports when the alert came through. His screen lit up with an unknown signal format. Lieutenant Nari ran the translation protocols. Her eyes went wide as she read the decoded message. "Sir, you need to see this." Jinwoo read it twice. An alien race was asking Earth for help. They were being attacked by something called the Shrikes. They were desperate. They were dying. He immediately contacted Fleet Admiral Hyun-sik. The old admiral arrived at the command center within the hour. Still wearing his sleeping clothes under his uniform jacket. His gray hair stuck up in odd directions, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Show me everything," Hyun-sik ordered. Intelligence analyst Bo-Ra pulled up all the data they had on the Valtorians. She displayed maps showing where the attacks happened. She showed population numbers and technology assessments. She explained what little they knew about the Shrikes from monitoring galactic communications. Hyun-sik studied it all in silence. Finally, he spoke. "If the Shrikes are not stopped, they will eventually reach human space. Better to fight them there than here." He called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. Officers arrived from all over Earth through quantum transport. They gathered in the Situation Room, looking at the alien message on the big screens. "We answer this call," Hyun-sik said, "but we do not go as advisors. We go as a proper military force. If we are going to fight, we fight to win." Some officers worried about galactic opinion. Others questioned if they should get involved in alien wars. Bo-Ra, raised practical concerns about operating so far from Earth. Hyun-sik cut through all objections with one simple statement. They called us for help. We help. That is what humans do. The order went out across Earth's military networks. Within 6 hours, ships began moving toward the assembly point. Within 12 hours, crews were boarding. Within 18 hours, the response fleet was ready. It was an impressive force. The flagship battle carrier, TDS Indomitable, led 4 heavy cruisers and 12 destroyer escorts. Inside the ships were 2,400 Marines, 89 aerospace fighters, and enough weapons to level a small moon. Captain Tae-min briefed his fighter squadron in the hangar bay. He was young for a captain, only 32. But he had more combat experience than pilots twice his age. We are going to meet aliens, he told his pilots. Real aliens. And we are going to show them what human pilots can do. The pilots cheered. Most of them had never seen combat outside of simulations. This was their chance to prove themselves. In another part of the ship, Marine Commander Hee-jin ran her troops through final drills. She was known throughout the Corps as the Iron Tiger. She had served in the African Rebellion and the Mars Independence War. She did not tolerate weakness or hesitation. Her Marines loved and feared her in equal measure. Listen up, she barked at her assembled company. We are going into unknown space to fight an unknown enemy. Some of you will not come back, but those colonists out there are counting on us. We do not let them down. We do not fail. We are Marines. We do the impossible before breakfast. Is that clear? Yes, Commander. They shouted back. Medical Officer Day 1 prepared the trauma bays with quiet efficiency. He had learned long ago that Marines always came back damaged. The question was never if, but how many, and how badly. He stocked extra synthetic blood, regeneration pods, and enough painkillers to supply a small hospital. At exactly 23 hours after receiving the distress call, the fleet jumped into quantum space. The ships disappeared from Earth orbit, heading toward coordinates 47 light-years away. Admiral Hyun-sik stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the swirling tunnel of faster-than-light travel through the view screen. Beside him, Nari monitored communications, making sure all ships stayed in formation. Do you think they know what they asked for? Nari said quietly. Hyun-sik smiled without humor. No. They asked for help. They are going to get Deathworlders. There is a difference. The fleet traveled through the void, carrying Earth's answer to the desperate call. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you summoned humans to war. Number. Alien. SOS. Summons. The most savage fleet of Deathworlders. The human fleet dropped out of quantum space at the rally coordinates. The transition was violent, as it always was, but the crews barely noticed. They were used to it. The Valtorian ships waiting for them were not prepared for what they saw. The human vessels looked nothing like any other ships in the galaxy. Where Valtorian craft were smooth and elegant, curved like shells, the human ships were angular and brutal. They bristled with weapons. Armor plating covered every surface. They looked exactly like what they were. Machines built for war. On the bridge of the Valtorian flagship Peaceful Dawn, Sensors Officer Rentok stared at his readings in disbelief. Ambassador, the gravity inside those ships is reading at 1.2 standard. That would crush most species. Kelvira felt her breathing tubes tighten. She had known humans were from a heavy gravity world, but seeing the numbers made it real. These beings lived every day in conditions that would cripple her people. She straightened her formal robes and prepared to meet them. Protocol required that she board their flagship for the greeting ceremony. She was terrified, but tried not to show it. The shuttle ride to the Indomitable took only minutes. When the airlock opened, the gravity hit her immediately. Everything felt twice as heavy. Walking required effort. Breathing took work. She understood now why humans moved with such dense, compact muscles. Admiral Hyun-sik waited in the reception bay with a small honor guard. Kelvira saw him and stopped. She had studied human biology, but seeing one in person was completely different. His eyes faced forward, like a predator's. His stance radiated controlled power. His smile showed flat teeth, designed for tearing meat. Every instinct in her aquatic ancestry screamed at her to flee. This was a hunter. This was an apex predator wearing a uniform. Ambassador Kelvira, Hyunsik said, his translator converting his words into Valtorian harmonics. Welcome aboard the Indomitable. Thank you for allowing us to help. His words were polite, but his presence was overwhelming. Kelvira managed to bow in the Valtorian fashion, her 4 arms crossing over her chest. Admiral, we are grateful you answered our call. Hyunsik led her toward the briefing room. Along the way, she saw human crew members going about their duties. They moved with casual ease in this crushing gravity. She saw one drinking from a cup labeled coffee. Her scanner identified the liquid as containing caffeine, a mild poison to most species. The human drank it like water. In the mess hall, she glimpsed Marines eating their meals. The food scanner nearly overloaded. Capsaicin levels that would qualify as chemical weapons under galactic law. Sodium concentrations that would kill most beings through organ failure. The humans ate it and laughed together. The briefing room was worse. The temperature was set to 21 degrees standard. Kelvira felt her body heat draining away. To her, this was approaching hypothermia range. The humans wore light uniforms and seemed perfectly comfortable. She met the other senior officers, Lieutenant Nari, who would handle communications between the fleets, Intelligence Officer Bo-Ra, whose eyes seemed to record and analyze everything, Captain Tae-min, the fighter commander, who grinned at her with too many teeth, Marine Commander Hae-jin, whose handshake nearly broke Kelvira's manipulator appendage, Medical Officer Dae-won, who somehow seemed gentle despite being built like a war machine. Each one was terrifying in their own way. But they were also professional, courteous, and focused. Whatever else humans were, they were clearly serious about this mission. The tactical briefing began. Kelvira displayed the current situation on the holographic projector. The Shrikes had established a blockade around Hexus 7, a mining colony. 14,000 civilians were trapped inside. The Shrikes were using them as living shields, knowing the Valtorian fleet would not risk civilian casualties. We have been in stalemate for 3 weeks, Kelvira explained. Galactic conventional warfare protocols prohibit attacking enemy positions within 500 meters of non-combatants. The Shrikes know this and exploit it. Hyunsik studied the tactical display in silence. Then he asked a question that made Kelvira's blood run cold. What happens if we ignore those protocols? The room went silent. Every Valtorian officer present looked shocked. You cannot, Kelvira said. The civilians would die. The council would never approve. Bo-Ra leaned forward, her fingers dancing across her datapad. I have identified 14 weak points in their blockade formation. With precision strikes, we could create openings without significant civilian risk. Taemin grinned. Give me 40 pilots and 6 hours. We will have your people out. You speak as if this is simple, Kelvira said. The Shrikes have superior numbers. Their positions are fortified. Any attack would result in massive casualties. Hae-jin spoke for the first time. Her voice was quiet, but hard as steel. Ambassador, with respect, you called us because your way was not working. Let us do this, our way. Hyunsik brought up a new tactical display. He outlined something he called Operation Thunderbolt. The humans would conduct a high-speed atmospheric insertion. Their fighters would strike Shrike positions with pinpoint accuracy. Marines would drop from orbit directly into the colony, using individual descent pods. They would extract the civilians, while the fleet provided orbital fire support. Every part of the plan violated galactic military doctrine. The atmospheric entry speeds would incinerate normal ships. The orbital drops had casualty rates that no civilized species would accept. The fire support required precision that was considered impossible. "This is insane," Kelvira said weakly. "This is human military doctrine." Hyunsik replied calmly. "We do not accept stalemates. We do not leave people behind. And we do not let rules written by comfortable politicians tie our hands when lives are at stake." He looked at her with those predator eyes. "You called us Deathworlders. You were not wrong. But understand what that means. We come from a planet that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We learned to fight back. We learned to win against impossible odds. We learned that sometimes the only way to save lives is to risk everything." Kelvira realized something that made her feel cold despite the warm room. The humans were not being reckless. They were experienced at exactly this type of warfare. They had done this before. Many times. Her people had evolved on a gentle ocean world where cooperation and consensus ruled. They had never faced existential threats. They had never needed to become warriors. Humans had evolved in hell, and it showed. The briefing continued with detailed planning. Tae Min explained his fighter tactics, using terms Kelvira barely understood. Attack angles that used gravity wells for acceleration. Weapons deployment at distances measured in meters, not kilometers. Evasion patterns that relied on human reaction speeds that were 3 times faster than Valtorian average. Heijin described the marine insertion. Each soldier would ride down in an individual pod, hitting the atmosphere at terminal velocity. They would rely on ablative shielding and powered armor to survive. Once on the ground, they would fight through whatever resistance they met to reach the civilians. "The casualty rate for this maneuver is 5%, Heijin said matter-of-factly. "In training. And in combat?" Kelvira asked. "Higher. But acceptable for the mission parameters." "Acceptable," Kelvira wanted to scream. These humans talked about death with the same tone other species used to discuss lunch options. Day 1 showed her the medical preparations. He had studied Valtorian physiology and prepared trauma bays to treat both human and alien wounded. He spoke about injuries with clinical precision, discussing burns, breaks, and trauma as inevitable outcomes. "You expect heavy casualties," Kelvira said. "I expect we will take damage, yes," Day 1 replied. "But we will complete the mission. We always do." The briefing ended. The human fleet would move into position immediately. The attack would begin at 0400 station time. In approximately 16 hours, Kelvira returned to her ship feeling overwhelmed. She found her second officer, Prenolk, waiting. "What are they like?" he asked. Kelvira thought carefully before answering. "They are exactly what we feared. And exactly what we need." That night, unable to sleep, she watched the human fleet through her view screen. Inside those angular ships, the crew prepared for battle. She knew Tae Min was probably reviewing flight plans. Heijin would be checking marine equipment. Daewon would be arranging his medical supplies. Bo-Ra would be running final intelligence assessments. Nari would be coordinating the complex timing. Nari would be coordinating the complex timing. And Hyun-Sik would be carrying the weight of command, knowing some of his people would not come home. They were terrifying. But they had also answered a desperate call from strangers, traveled 47 light years, and were now preparing to risk their lives for people they had never met. Kelvira finally understood why the galaxy feared humans. It was not because they were violent. It was because they were willing to do whatever was necessary, pay whatever cost was required, to protect those who could not protect themselves. The Deathworlders were here, and the Shrikes were about to learn what that meant. Number, Alien SOS, summons the most savage fleet of Deathworlders. At exactly 0400 station time, Captain Tae Min launched his fighter from the Indomitable. 39 other pilots followed him into the black. They formed up in attack formation and dove toward Hexus 7 at full acceleration. The planet grew larger in Tae Min's canopy. He checked his instruments one final time. Speed was building toward Mach 12. His fighter began to shake as they hit the outer atmosphere. Most species would have turned back. The humans pushed forward. "Stay tight," Taemin called to his squadron. "We go in fast, hit hard, and get out. Just like training. Except this was nothing like training. This was real combat against an enemy that killed without mercy." But Taemin felt alive. This was what he was born to do. The fighters screamed through Hexus 7's atmosphere like falling meteors. The Shrikes detected them too late. By the time their defense systems activated, the human fighters were already among them. Taemin targeted the first Shrike position. His weapons computer locked on. He fired. The missile covered the distance in under 2 seconds and obliterated the target. One down. Hundreds to go. Above the planet, the Indomitable's railguns opened fire. Massive tungsten rods accelerated to 3% of light speed. Each rod carried the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. But the targeting was perfect. Each shot hit a Shrike position within meters of where Bo-Ra's intelligence said it would be. The Valtorian observers watching from their ships were horrified. Kinetic weapons of that scale were considered war crimes under galactic law. But they could not deny the precision. Every shot eliminated an enemy position without touching nearby civilian structures. In orbit, Heejin stood in the drop bay with her Marines. They were sealed in their powered armor, checking weapons one final time. Each suit was a marvel of human engineering. Servo-assisted muscles, layered armor plating, integrated weapons systems, and life support for 72 hours. 2 minutes, the drop coordinator announced. Heijin activated the company-wide channel. "Listen up, Marines. We are about to do something incredibly stupid and incredibly dangerous. Some of us will not walk away from this, but those 14,000 civilians down there are counting on us. We do not fail. We do not quit. We are the first ones in and the last ones out. Oorah! Woo-rah! 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 Oorah!" 200 voices shouted back. The drop bay doors opened. Heijin looked down at the planet below. Then, she jumped. The drop was the worst part. Falling through space in a metal coffin, relying on technology to keep you alive. The pod's ablative shielding began to burn as it hit the atmosphere. Temperature readings climbed. The pod shook violently. Heijin had done this 23 times in her career. It never got easier. 3 Marines were lost during the drop. Mechanical failures, bad luck, or just statistics. Their pods broke apart in the atmosphere. Heijin noted their names for the casualty reports she would write later. If she survived, the remaining pods slammed into the mining complex like meteors. Heijin's pod hit the ground, the impact absorbing through her armor's suspension system. She blew the release charges and stepped out into hell. The Shrike warriors were already swarming toward her position. They were horrible creatures. Insectoid bodies the size of horses, covered in chitinous armor, with bladed limbs that could cut through steel. Their mandibles dripped with acidic saliva. Heijin raised her rifle and opened fire. The first Shrike took 3 rounds to its neural cluster and dropped. The second lunged at her. She sidestepped and brought her armored fist down on its head. The servo assist in her armor gave the punch the force of a sledgehammer. Around her, the Marines established a perimeter. The training took over. Fire and movement, cover and advance. The doctrine written in blood over hundreds of years of human warfare. "Push toward the civilian shelters," Heijin ordered. "Stay in your teams. Watch your corners." The battle became close and brutal. The Shrikes were deadly opponents. Their natural weapons could penetrate armor. Their acid spit could melt faceplates. They fought with hive-mind coordination, but the Marines were Deathworlders. And humans had been fighting for survival since before they had language. Young-ho, the demolitions expert, breached the first reinforced door with shaped charges. The explosion echoed through the complex. Inside, Valtorian civilians huddled in terror. When they saw the armored Marines, they did not know if they were being rescued or attacked. Heijin removed her helmet, showing her human face. "We are here to get you out. Stay calm and follow our instructions." The civilians stared at her with wide eyes. She knew what they saw. Forward-facing predator eyes, exposed teeth, muscular build designed for violence. But she kept her voice gentle. These people had been through enough trauma. Meanwhile, Tae-min was having the time of his life. His fighter weaved between mining towers at speeds that should have been impossible in atmosphere. The Shrikes tried to track him but could not match his maneuvers. Human pilots had reaction times and G-force tolerance that no other species could match. "Bogey at 3 o'clock, his wingman called out. Tae-min rolled his fighter inverted and pulled hard. The enemy position flashed past his canopy. He fired without looking at his instruments, relying on instinct. The target exploded. "That is 6 for me," he announced cheerfully. "Anyone keeping count?" A Shrike hive ship tried to escape the planet. Tae-min pursued it into a narrow canyon. His fighter's wing clipped the rock wall, tearing away ablative armor. Warning lights flashed across his console. He ignored them. The hive ship was getting away, and he could not allow that. He pushed his damaged fighter to maximum thrust and closed the distance. At point-blank range, he fired every missile he had left. The hive ship exploded in a fireball that lit up the canyon. Tae-min flew through the flames, laughing. On the ground, Day-1 landed with the second wave. He was a medic, but he still wore marine armor and carried weapons. In the human military, everyone was a fighter first. He immediately began triaging the wounded. A Valtorian child had her arm burned by Shrike acid. Day-1 cleaned the wound with steady hands, while explosions echoed nearby. He injected local anesthetic and began applying synthetic skin. A Shrike warrior broke through the perimeter, charging toward the medical area. The civilians screamed. Day-1 did not look up from his patient. He drew his sidearm with his free hand and put 3 rounds through the Shrike's neural cluster. The creature dropped dead 3 meters away. Day-1 holstered his weapon and returned to treating the child. "You are safe now," he told her gently. "We will get you home." The battle raged for 4 hours. The Marines pushed deeper into the complex, clearing each section with brutal efficiency. The Shrikes fought hard, but were overwhelmed by human tactics and technology. Valtorian civilians were evacuated in groups, protected by armored Marines who took hits meant for them. Finally, Heijin received the report she was waiting for. All civilians accounted for. 14,000 souls, ready for extraction. She activated the fleet channel. "Indomitable. This is ground team. Package is secure. Request immediate dust-off." Transport ships descended from orbit, escorted by Tae-min's fighters. The civilians were loaded aboard with practiced efficiency. The Marines held the perimeter until the last transport lifted off. Only then did they begin their own withdrawal. Heijin was the last Marine to board. She took one final look at the shattered mining complex. Shrike bodies littered the ground. Scorch marks covered the walls. But the civilians were safe. The transport climbed toward orbit. Through the window, Heijin could see the Indomitable waiting. She checked the casualty reports on her data pad. 47 Marines wounded, ranging from minor to critical. 8 dead. 8 good soldiers who would never see home again. 8 families who would receive the notification she dreaded sending. But 14,000 civilians were alive because of them. The transport docked with the Indomitable. The civilians were processed through medical screening. Many of them were in shock, unable to believe they had survived. The human medics treated them with surprising gentleness, speaking softly and moving slowly to avoid scaring them. Kelvira met Heijin in the landing bay. The Marine commander's armor was scorched and dented. Blood splatter covered her chest plate, but her eyes were calm. "All civilians recovered," Heijin reported formally. Mission complete. Kelvira looked at her in wonder. Your people did in 4 hours what we could not do in 3 weeks. Heijin removed her helmet. Her face was streaked with sweat and fatigue. We did what was necessary. That is what humans do. Later, on the bridge, Admiral Hyun-sik reviewed the battle reports. The operation had been successful by every measure, but he felt the weight of the 8 names on the casualty list. 8 soldiers under his command who had trusted him to bring them home. Nari approached quietly. Sir, the Valtorians are calling you a hero. The galactic news networks are covering this everywhere. Hyun-sik did not care about fame. He cared about his people. He would write letters to 8 families tonight. He would tell them their loved ones died, doing something important. He would try to give their sacrifice meaning, but first, he had to address his crew. He activated the ship-wide channel. All hands. This is the Admiral. Today we showed the galaxy what humanity is capable of. We saved 14,000 lives. We struck a blow against an enemy that thought it could win through terror. We proved them wrong. To those we lost, we will remember you. To those who fought, I am proud to serve with you. To the Valtorians we saved, welcome aboard. You are safe now. That is all. The crew went back to their duties. There was still work to do. Wounds to treat, equipment to repair, reports to file. But they had won. The Deathworlders had come to Hexus 7, and they had delivered hell to those who deserved it. Number. Alien. SOS. Summons the most savage fleet of Deathworlders. The Shrike Collective processed the data from Hexus 7 across billions of networked minds. They had been expanding through the galaxy for 4,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and absorbed dozens of species. Nothing had ever stopped them. Until now, the defeat troubled the collective. They analyzed every second of the battle. They studied the human tactics, technology, and biology. The results were disturbing. Humans operated efficiently in conditions the Shrikes considered extreme environments. High gravity, rapid temperature changes, low oxygen atmospheres. The humans seemed comfortable in all of them. Human military doctrine was based on maneuvers that sacrificed safety for speed. They accepted casualty rates that would destroy the morale of any other species. They fought harder when wounded or threatened. The collective had never encountered anything like this. These humans were from a world that had tried to kill them every day for millions of years. They had survived by becoming more dangerous than their environment. The collective made a decision. The human fleet must be eliminated before they could teach their tactics to other species. The infection must be stopped here. They began moving forces to the Viridian Cluster, a strategic star system on the route to Valtorian space. They committed 3 full battle fleets, 600 vessels, 200,000 warriors. It was enough force to destroy most civilizations. Intelligence Officer Bo-Ra detected the Shrike movement 3 days later. She was analyzing communication patterns when she noticed coordinated signals converging on Viridian. She ran the numbers through her computer. Then she ran them again, hoping she was wrong. She was not wrong. She brought her findings to Admiral Hyun-sik. He studied the tactical display in silence. The Shrikes had placed themselves in a perfect ambush position. Any fleet traveling to the Valtorian core worlds would have to pass through Viridian. They are trying to trap us, Bo-Ra said. Hyun-sik nodded slowly. Yes, they are learning from their mistakes. They want to fight us in space where their numbers give them an advantage. We are outnumbered 4-1, sir. Galactic military doctrine says to avoid battle at anything worse than 3-2 odds. We should wait for reinforcements or take an alternate route. Hyun-sik looked at her. How long would waiting take? 2 weeks minimum. Maybe 3. And how many Valtorian colonies will fall in that time? Bo-Ra checked her intelligence reports. 2 more fell yesterday. Hyun-sik stood and walked to the view screen. He looked out at the stars in silence. Finally, he spoke. Prepare the fleet for combat. We are going through Viridian. Our render. We have a wa. Our render? Bora felt her stomach drop. Sir, the odds. I am aware of the odds, officer. Prepare the fleet. Yes, sir. Ambassador Kelvira arrived on the bridge 20 minutes later. She had heard the news through the intelligence channels her people shared with the humans. She was terrified. Admiral, you cannot be serious about this. Your fleet will be destroyed. Wait for help. Take another route. Please. Hyun-sik turned to face her. His expression was calm, but his eyes were hard. Ambassador, while we wait, your people die. While we take the long route, more colonies fall. You called us for help. This is what help looks like. This is suicide, Kelvira said desperately. You called us Deathworlders like it is an insult, Hyun-sik replied. But we are from a planet that tried to kill us every day. Fighting, when the odds are bad, is not bravery for us. It is just Tuesday. He brought up a tactical plan on the display. We will not fight their fleet directly. We will hit their hive ship. It is the central intelligence node coordinating the collective. Without it, their individual ships will lose cohesion. Kelvira studied the plan with growing horror. The hive ship was protected at the center of the enemy formation. Reaching it would require splitting the human fleet. Taemin's fighters would draw enemy forces out of position. Heejin's marines would board the hive ship directly, and the Indomitable would perform a blind quantum slip jump to appear behind enemy lines. A blind jump could materialize your ship inside a planet, Kelvira said. The odds of survival are terrible. Bora spoke up quietly. 1 in 3 chance of success, Admiral. I have run the calculations multiple times. 33%, Hyun-sik said. I have worked with worse odds. Kelvira realized these humans were not reckless. They had simply done the mathematics and decided that a 33% chance of winning now was better than a certain disaster later. It was logical in a terrifying way. She left the bridge feeling sick. She returned to her ship and sent a message to the Valtorian Council, explaining what the humans planned to do. The response was immediate and unanimous. The humans were insane, but they were also the only hope the Valtorians had. On the Indomitable, the crew prepared for battle. Taemin gathered his pilots in the briefing room. He had lost 23 pilots at Hexus 7. The survivors were experienced now. They had seen real combat. They knew what was coming. We are going to fly into the middle of 600 enemy ships, Taemin told them. They will all be shooting at us. Most of them will miss, because they are not as good as we are. Some of them will hit. That is the job. We draw their fire, so the Marines can reach the hive ship. A young pilot raised his hand. What are our survival chances, sir? Taemin considered lying. Then he decided they deserved the truth. Honestly, about 50-50. But if we do not do this, a lot of innocent people will die. So, we do the job. The pilots nodded. They understood. This was what they had signed up for. In the Marine Bay, Heejin inspected her troops. They had taken casualties at Hexus 7, but replacements had arrived from the other ships. She now had 400 Marines ready for the boarding action. This will be worse than the last one, she told them bluntly. We will be fighting inside an enemy ship, designed for creatures that hate us. The Shrikes know we are coming. They will be ready. But we have one advantage. We are humans. We fight better in impossible situations. Now, get your gear ready. We launch in 6 hours. Medical Officer Day 1 prepared the trauma bays. He had requested additional supplies from the other ships. He expanded his triage areas. He trained extra staff on combat trauma procedures. He did everything he could to prepare for the casualties he knew were coming. Lieutenant Nari coordinated the complex timing between all the fleet elements. The fighters had to launch exactly on schedule. The blind jump had to happen at the precise moment. The marine insertion had to follow immediately after. If any element was off by even a few seconds, the entire plan would fail. She ran simulations constantly, checking and rechecking every variable. The stress was enormous. But Nari had learned long ago that precision saved lives. Admiral Hyun-sik spent the hours before battle alone in his quarters. He wrote 8 letters to the families of the Marines killed at Hexus 7. He wrote carefully, trying to give each family some comfort, some meaning for their loss. Then he wrote 43 more letters. These were addressed to the families of crew members who had the highest statistical probability of dying in the coming battle. He did not send them yet, but if he died and they did not, someone would find the letters and make sure they were delivered. It was a grim task, but it was his responsibility as commander. His people trusted him to lead them into danger. The least he could do was honor their sacrifice with personal words to those who loved them. Finally, the time came. The fleet moved toward the Viridian cluster. The Shrikes were waiting, exactly where Bo-Ra predicted they would be. On the bridge, Hyun-sik looked at his senior staff. Nari at communications, Bo-Ra at intelligence, Dae-won on standby in medical, Tae-min ready in his fighter, Hae-jin suited up with her marines. All ships report ready, sir, Nari said quietly. Hyun-sik took a deep breath. He was about to gamble thousands of lives on a 33% chance. It was the worst part of command. But someone had to make these decisions. Execute Operation Broken Nest, he ordered. All units, engage. The fleet jumped forward into battle. The Shrikes were about to learn that outnumbering humans was not the same as defeating them. Deathworlders did not surrender. They did not retreat. They advanced until the enemy was destroyed, or they were. There was no third option. That was what made them so dangerous. That was what made them human. Number: Alien SOS. Summons the most savage fleet of Deathworlders. The human fleet dropped into normal space at the edge of the Viridian cluster. 600 Shrike vessels immediately changed course toward them. It looked like a swarm of angry insects descending on prey. Captain Tae-min launched his fighter with 40 survivors from his original squadron. They formed up and accelerated directly toward the center of the enemy formation. It was the most aggressive maneuver possible. Most commanders would have called it suicide. Tae-min called it Tuesday. Stay with me, he told his pilots. We make them angry. We make them chase us. We clear the path. The Shrikes detected the fighters and reacted with confusion. No sane species would charge directly into overwhelming numbers. They assumed it was a malfunction or a trick. By the time they realized the humans meant it, the fighters were already among them. Tae-min's weapons computer screamed with target locks. He ignored most of them and focused on the biggest ships. His missiles streaked across space and slammed into a Shrike cruiser. The explosion lit up his canopy. He was already targeting the next one. His squadron scattered through the enemy formation like fireflies in a storm. They fired in all directions. They changed vectors constantly. They were impossible to predict because they were not following any logical tactics. They were following human instinct. Attack everything. Trust nothing. And never stop moving. The Shrikes tried to engage them. But human pilots had reaction times 3 times faster than most species. They had technology designed for high-G maneuvers that would kill other beings. And they had trained for exactly this kind of chaos. 3 human fighters were destroyed in the first 2 minutes. Tae-min saw them die on his tactical display. He noted their names and kept fighting. There would be time to mourn later. If there was a later. Above the battle, Admiral Hyun-sik watched the enemy formation from the bridge of the Indomitable. The fighters were doing their job. The Shrikes were reacting, pulling ships out of position to chase the human pilots. Now, Hyun-sik said quietly, the Indomitable and her escorts activated their quantum slip drives. The mathematics were impossibly complex. They were jumping blind. With no way to scan their destination first, they could materialize inside a planet, or inside another ship, or in the gravity well of a star. But Bo-Ra had done the calculations. There was a 1 in 3 chance this would work. Space twisted, reality bent. The universe screamed. The Indomitable appeared 40,000 kilometers behind the enemy fleet, directly next to the Shrike hive ship. The blind jump had worked. On the bridge, Nari checked her instruments with shaking hands. "All ships accounted for, sir." "We made it." Hyun-sik allowed himself one moment of relief. Then he gave the next order. "Launch Marines. All batteries. Fire." Haejin stood in the drop bay with 400 Marines. They had been waiting in their armor for 2 hours, not knowing if the jump would work or if they would die instantly in a catastrophic collision. Now they knew. They had survived the jump. Time to earn their pay. "Go, go, go!" she shouted. The Marines launched from the drop bay in individual assault pods. They crossed the distance to the hive ship in less than 30 seconds. Plasma cutters melted through the alien hull. The Marines breached into the interior. Hae-jin was first through the hole. She dropped into a corridor that looked like something from a nightmare. The walls were organic, pulsing with bioluminescent veins. The air was thick and humid. Everything smelled of rot and chemicals. Shrike warriors filled the corridor. They charged immediately. Hae-jin raised her rifle and fired on full automatic. The first 3 Shrikes died before they covered half the distance. The 4th reached her. She blocked its bladed limb with her armored forearm and punched it in the head cluster. The servo assist in her armor gave the blow-crushing force. Keaton cracked. The Shrike dropped. "Push forward," she ordered. Bo-Ra says, "The nerve center is 3 levels down. Move." The Marines advanced through the ship. The fighting was brutal. The corridors were designed for insectoid bodies, not human proportions. The Shrikes had home advantage, but humans had evolved to hunt in caves, forests, and urban warfare. They adapted. Young-ho planted explosives on structural supports as they advanced. Every 20 meters, he left another charge. They would need a way out if things went wrong. Daewon moved with the assault team, against all doctrine. Medics were supposed to stay in safe areas, but there were no safe areas in this fight. He carried his rifle in one hand and his medical kit in the other. When a Marine went down with acid burns, Daewon treated him while the others provided covering fire. A Shrike warrior lunged at Daewon from a side passage. He shot it twice without looking away from his patient. Then he went back to applying synthetic skin to the burn wound. "You are insane, Doc," the wounded Marine said. "Probably," Daewon agreed. "But you are not dying today. Now shut up and let me work." The Marines pushed deeper into the hive ship. They lost soldiers at every turn. The Shrikes fought with desperate fury, knowing their central intelligence was threatened. But the humans kept advancing. They were Deathworlders. Advancing into danger was what they did. Outside the hive ship, the space battle raged. The Indomitable and her escorts were surrounded by Shrike vessels. They fired their weapons in all directions. Railgun rounds punched through enemy hulls. Missile salvos turned space into a firework display. Laser batteries carved burning lines across the dark. Taemin's fighter squadron was being decimated. He had started with 40 pilots. Now he was down to 23. But they were still fighting, still drawing enemy fire, still buying time for the Marines. A Shrike interceptor locked onto Taemin's 6. He rolled his fighter and pulled hard. But the enemy stayed with him. His warning systems screamed. He was about to die. Then his wingman swept in from above and destroyed the enemy with a precision burst. "I got you, Captain." "Thanks," Taemin said. Then he spotted another target and dove back into the fight. There was no time to think about death. Only time to kill enemies and protect his people. Inside the hive ship, Haejin reached the central chamber. It was massive, the size of a sports stadium. At the center was the Queen, a creature the size of a building. It was surrounded by elite guard drones, each one larger and more heavily armored than normal Shrike warriors. "This is it," Haejin said. "All teams, Converge on my position. We end this now. The Marines charged. The elite guards met them. The fighting became desperate. These guards were faster, stronger, and smarter than normal Shrikes. They fought with coordinated precision. Jin lost half her assault team in the first minute. But the Marines kept pushing forward. They used everything. Rifles, grenades, combat knives, armored fists. When one Marine fell, another took their place. Young Ho fought his way close to the Queen and planted a plasma charge directly on its massive body. Then, he was cut down by a guard drone. He died knowing he had completed his mission. Jin saw him fall. She roared in rage and charged the remaining guards. She fought like a wild animal. All training forgotten. Pure human fury unleashed. Her armor took hit after hit. Warning lights flashed red across her display. She did not care. She reached the Queen and placed her last plasma charge on its neural cluster. Then she activated all the charges at once. "All Marines, withdraw now," she shouted. "Building is coming down." The survivors ran. They fought their way back through corridors filled with Shrikes. Day 1 carried 2 wounded Marines who could not walk. Other soldiers helped those who were hurt. No one was left behind. They reached the breach point. The assault pods were gone, destroyed in the fighting. They were trapped. "Indomitable, we need extraction," Jin called. "We are at the original breach. We cannot hold this position long." On the bridge, Hyun-sik did not hesitate. "Bring us in. Get our people." The massive battle carrier moved directly alongside the hive ship. It was an insane maneuver. The 2 ships were so close they were almost touching, but it meant the Marines only had to jump across 5 meters of open space instead of deploying in individual pods. The Marines jumped. Most made it. A few missed and drifted into space. Recovery teams snagged them with tractor beams. Jin was the last one across. As she jumped, the plasma charges detonated. The entire hive ship exploded in a fireball that lit up the cluster. The effect was immediate. Across the entire battlefield, Shrike vessels lost coordination. They began firing on each other. Their distributed intelligence had collapsed without the Queen to organize it. "All fighters, pull back," Taemin ordered. "Let them destroy themselves." The human fleet withdrew. The Shrikes were finished. 600 vessels were now just drifting wreckage or confused individual ships firing randomly. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Nari monitored the battlefield. "Sir, all Shrike vessels are non-operational or destroyed. We have won." Hyun-sik nodded slowly. Then he checked the casualty reports. His display filled with names. Good people who would never go home. He felt the weight of every single one, but they had won. The Shrike threat was broken. The invasion was over. 3 days later, the human fleet returned to Valtorian space. The Indomitable showed battle damage across 60% of her hull. Taemin had lost over half his pilots. Jin's Marines had taken 40% casualties. Day 1 had worked for 3 days straight, treating the wounded, but they had saved the Valtorians. They had stopped the Shrikes. They had done what they came to do. Ambassador Kelvira boarded the Indomitable one final time. She found Admiral Hyun-sik in the medical bay, sitting beside the bed of a young Marine who was dying despite all of Day 1's efforts. The soldier looked up at his commander and smiled. "Did we win, sir?" "We won," Hyun-sik said gently. "You did great." "Good," the Marine said. Then he closed his eyes and did not open them again. Kelvira watched Hyun-sik sit there for a long moment, holding his soldier's hand. Finally, he stood and covered the body with a sheet. "I am sorry," Kelvira said quietly. "War has a cost," Hyun-sik replied. "We pay it. That is what makes us different. We understand the price, and we pay it anyway, because some things are worth dying for." The Galactic Council formally requested a military alliance with Earth. They needed teachers. They needed strategists. They needed the willingness to do what was necessary. They needed Deathworlders. Hyunsik accepted, on one condition. We fight on our terms, or not at all. The council agreed. They had no choice. On the observation deck of the Indomitable, now in orbit around Earth, the senior staff gathered one final time. Hyunsik, Taemin, Heejin, Bo-ra, Dae-won, and Nari stood together, looking down at their home world. They called us savage, Taemin said. They were not wrong, Heejin replied. We are just selective about when we release it. Hyunsik raised a glass of whiskey, the beverage that would poison most species in the galaxy. To the savage fleet! May we always fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. They drank together. They had earned it. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. When you are desperate enough to call Earth for help, you better be ready for what answers. Because humans do not do anything halfway. They do not negotiate with evil. They do not accept defeat. They bring overwhelming force, controlled violence, and absolute commitment to protecting the innocent. They are Deathworlders. And the galaxy was safer because of them.